This is Gemara and Pesachim Daf Samuch. As we conclude today the parak Tamin Ishcha. Today's shir should be a special schos. Refuah Shlema for Chayim Yitzchak Moshe Ben Esther Rezel. Should have a complete recovery. Baruch Hashem. They've been hearing some progress. We're hoping the schos of the entire Chabura learning and concluding this parak of Tamin Ishcha should be a schos for complete refuah. Of course, all the Chayyim Chaim Yisrael and Malki Demir Ben Ikir Men Mevegu Michilis Yipar Master Tide Huva Chaim Ben Sar Shlomo Ben Rezel Sar Bas Knem Dit Basim Chayyim Sar Yusil Ben Mindel Eliezer President Shavalei Shlomo Bas Nami Shavig of Shirichan Faldav Ben Yitri Shlomo Ben Tila Daniel Ben Chana Rizel Malki Chaya Bas Mina Liberacha Bas Tebia Musa B'Soy Shar Chayli Yisrael. We pick it up in the bottom of Samuch Dalid Amud Beis, about 8 lines from the bottom, 2 dots. Says the Gemara, we're in the middle of the process of the Karban Pesach. We're going to conclude that process today. Koyin HaKaroiv Eitzel Mizbeach. So we said that the Koyin that's closest to the Mizbeach does the Zrika. He sprinkles the blood of the Karban Pesach on the Mizbeach. Says the Gemara, Man Tana Pesach Zrika. Who is this Tana that holds you do Zrika by the Karban Pesach? Amar Rav Chisda. Rav Yosi Aglili. He the Tana learned to the Reisa. Rav Yosi Aglili. Omer says Rav Yosi Aglili. Says Rav Yosi Aglili. The pasuk says with regard to Bechar, as Damam Tizraik al Mizbeach, their blood, Damam, should be sprinkled on the Mizbeach, Ves Chalvam, and their fats Taktir should be burnt. Says the Gemara, says Rav Yosi Aglili, he learns, Damai loy namar, it doesn't say its blood, El Damam, rather their blood in plural, Chalbai loy namar, it doesn't say its fats, El Chalbam, rather their fats. Limit, what does it teach me? Al Bechar, on the Bechar, which is what the pasuk is referring to. Umaiser, Upesach, and Meiser, and as well the Karban Pesach, which are all Kachim Kalim, Shein, Tunim, Matan, Damim. They all required putting the blood, Veimurim, and burning the limbs, the Gabim Mizbeach on the Mizbeach. So the Rebekar for sprinkling, the blood on the Karban Pesach is learned out from Bechar, says Rav Yisei Aglili. Minolim the Tu'unin Yisoid. How do we know that the blood is placed on the Yisoid, on the foundation of the Mizbeach? Rav Elazar, Asi Zrika, Zrika Mi'ayla. We learn out from the Zrika that is by the Oila. Ksivacha says over here, as Damam Tizraik al Mizbeach, their blood should be sprinkled on the Mizbeach. Ksivacha, and it says over there, Vizarku b'nei Aaron HaKayanim as Damai al Mizbeach. And the children of Aaron sprinkled their blood on the Mizbeach. Saviv, around Ma Oila. So just like the second pasuk is referring to the Oila. Tunin Yisoid. It says you did it Saviv around. We know that means Yisoid, like the Gemara is about to explain. Af Pesach Nami Ta'an Yisoid. So to the Karban Pesach has to well be on the side and the foundation of the Mizbeach. But how the Gemara says, you look Gufa Min Aleph, how do we know, top of Samchei Min Aleph, how do we know that the Oila needs to be on the side of the Mizbeach? Amar Cross says the Gemara, El Yisai Mizbach Oila Alma Oila Tun Yisai. That's what we know that the Oila has to be by the Yisai. Once we know that the Oila has to be by the Yisai, therefore the Gemara is teaching us as well that the Karban Pesach, Bechar, etc. have to as well be on the Yisai. Says the Gemara, so again, we learned that the Karban Pesach needs to have Zrika from the Bechar, and we learned it's on the Yisoid from Oila. Says the Gemara, 2 lines down, Samachayim and Aleph Yatza, Katri Yishayna, we said in the Mishnah, there were 3 different groups. One group leaves, the second one comes in, the second one leaves, the third one comes in. Says the Gemara, Tana, we learned. He Nikra is Katatzlanis. That third group, the people who waited all the way to the end, they're called the lazy group. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. Very good, you're right, they were last. But what do you mean? We need them. We learned out when we started off this discussion yesterday. We said that we learned out from the pasuk on the beginning of Samach Talim and Aleph. In the beginning of Samach Talim and Beis, we said that we learned it out from the fact that the Torah calls it Kahal Eda and Yisrael. Learned that there has to be 3 groups. So if there has to be 3 groups, someone's always going to be last. So why are you calling them Atzlanim? Why are you calling them lazy? Says the Gemara. What else should they have done? They have to have a third group. Says the Gemara, important lesson in life on the 5th line. It's true, someone has to be last, but you don't have to be last. If you were last, you're the lazy one. They should have quickened themselves and been earlier. Rabbi says, a similar concept, the world cannot exist without perfume merchant, to blood bursting, without a tanner. Tanner, the person who deals with the hides, but says Rebbe, Ashrei Mishum Nasam Basam. But praiseworthy is the one that takes the beautiful profession. Literally, because it's a stinky, smelly profession. So says Rebbe, it's true the world needs it, but praiseworthy is one that chooses the good profession. And similarly, says Rebbe, the world cannot exist without males, without females. But Ashrei Mi, but praiseworthy is the one Shabanim Zacharim who has male children. The Keva. sacrifice was female children. So we see this important rule that it's true, the world needs both. We have to always strive and try for that which is better. Says the Gemara, we said in the Mishnah, 2 dots, 10 lines down, that which they do during the week is like that which they do on Shabbos. And then we said that the one thing they did was that on Shabbos they used to open up the plug, let the water flush across the floor of the Beis Hamikdash and wash away all the blood. And the Mishnah said, Shalai baratzin chachamim, the chachamim were not happy with that. Says the Gemara, Shalai baratzin, man, who are these chachamim that were not happy? Rav Chisda, Shalai baratzin, Rav Eliezer. It's the opinion of Rav Eliezer. Why? The Rabbanan Ami Shvasu. Because according to the Rabbanan, washing the floors in Isser the Rabbanan, a Shvas. Vein Shvas v'Mikdash, and there's no Isser Shvas, of course, in the Beis HaMikdash. Says Gemara, Mahi, what is this machlekes, Rebbe, and what is this machlekes, Rabbanan and Rav Eliezer, with regard to washing the floor, that we're learning, it's only according to Rav Eliezer. Tani learned in a Brisa. This is reminiscent of Gemara and Shabbos days. Echad ha'chaylev, one who milks a cow, v'amachabit, one who curdles the cheese, v'amagabein, one who, curdles the milk, and megabin is he's making into cheeses the two different stages. Kigroiger is like a dried fig. V'amachabit, one who sweeps. V'amemarbitz, one who sprinkles the water to get the dust to settle. V'areide chalos tavash, and you remove the honeycombs. B'shoygeg b'shabbos chayiv did it a shoygeg you're chayiv chatos. Hazen if it's on purpose. B'yantiv leikes arbayim you get malchus and yantiv diver Rav Eliezer. Rav Eliezer learns it's an iser de'orais all these things. V'chachamim oimrim no. Echadzeh both this and this. Einay elam misham shvos. They're all the rabbanans. So what was one of the things? Sweeping and sprinkling the floors and cleaning the floors. So we see cleaning the floors according to Rav Eliezer is the Raisa, Chacham is the Rabbanan. Therefore says the Gemara, our Mishnah must be Rav Eliezer, and therefore that's why they weren't happy when they opened up the plug and let the water flush according to the floor. Rav Ashi Omer, no, if you look at Chacham, it could be that even the Chachamim, not only Rav Eliezer, Rav Nasan, according to Rav Nasan, the Tanya Rav Nasan says, Rav Nasan Omer, Shvos, Sricha Yitiru, Shvos Eina Sricha Lo Yitiru. Important rule, we don't, not every Shvos, not every Derabanan were they allowed to do in the Beis HaMikdash, only the Shvasim that were important and necessary, but that which was not, and therefore says the Gemara, it could be that even we're going to the opinion of the Chachamim, but this was not necessary to wash the floors, and that's why they were not happy. Says the Gemara, Rav Yehuda Aimer, so then we continue in the Mishnah, and Rav Yehuda said he used to take a cup and fill it up with all the blood that was on the floor of the Beis HaMikdash, and do zrika and sprinkle that blood on the Mizbeach. We didn't really see why, which the Gemara now is going to explain to us right now. Says the Gemara, Tanya, we learned in a Raisa. Rav Yehuda Aimer, Rav Yehuda says, they were full of a cup with the blood of the mixture of the tareves. Why? Let's say one of their bloods had spilled, meaning when someone was doing the avodah, let's say they spilled their blood, they dropped the bucket and the blood's on the floor. If you don't do the zrika, we know the carbon is not kosher. So in order to save that potential person, they would go and they would scoop up the blood in order to help and be machshir and permit that carbon to make sure they get a little bit of the blood in order in case someone spilled it. Says the Gemara, how do you know that? But the blood was not accepted in the kli. There's 4 stages, let's remember. This is the shechita, the slaughter, the kabbalah, the catching of the blood, the halacha, the walking, and the zrika, the sprinkling. So you're going to take the blood off the floor to fix the sprinkling problem. But how do you know there was a kabbalah? How do you know they caught the blood? Maybe what happened was they did the shechita, and the blood went straight to the floor, and no one caught it at all. Mina yadi. How do you know? How do you know that the case was where they caught it and then they dropped the bucket? Maybe the case was they didn't catch the blood at all. So he says, no, you're right. You know what the case is? Perhaps they didn't catch it in the kli and they're coming to save that person. So they responded, I'm sorry. So Amr Lahen, so Rav Yehuda responds, I also didn't say, I'm talking about a case where they caught it already. How do you know? How do you know, Rav Yehuda? Why are you so convinced? Rav Yehuda says, I'm asking to you. I'm not talking about helping everyone. We can't save everyone's day, but let's at least save the person that already caught the blood in the kli. Says the Gemara, further, Rav Yehuda, how do you know that's the case? Says the Gemara, Kohanim's name. Kohanim's reason, they're very careful, very quick. So it must be they already caught it and only fell afterwards. Says the Gemara, the obvious question. He's reason, am I mishtafach? If they're very careful, very meticulous, so why are they dropping the bucket? Says the Gemara, no, Agav Zizu Sayu, because they were so fast, Avdi Mishtapech. That's the reason why. It could be that they dropped it because they were too fast and things happen. Says the Gemara, okay, fine. So granted, Rav Yehuda, you just said what's the case? They did the Shechita, they did the Kabbalah, they started the Halacha, boom, dropped the bucket. So you, Rav Yehuda, want that every time they should go scoop up one extra cup of water? Why do the sprinkling? Just in case maybe there was a little bit of blood of that carbon, and therefore to save that carbon. Ask the Gemara, Validama Tamsis Murabai. There's two types of blood. Let's remind ourselves. It's Dama Nefesh, which is the lifeblood, the blood that splurts forth after the Shechita, which that is the blood you have to catch, and that is what you have to sprinkle. Then there's the trickle down blood, that after the gush, then there's little trickles of the blood that flows down. So says the Gemara, what's on the floor? On the floor is all the blood, not just the blood of the lifeblood, also the Dama Tamsis, also that trickle blood. And it's all mixed together. And like Rashi says, you can have batal. It's going to be mavatal. It's going to be nullified in all the blood on the floor. Says the Gemara, no, Rav Yehuda Tamei Dam. Rav Yehuda goes according to his reasoning that says, Dama Tamsis, Dama Ma'alihu. Rav Yehuda holds Dam Tamsis, you don't really need Dam Nefesh. You don't only need to have that gush. Even the trickle blood, that is good blood. The tiny, like we learned in Abraisa, Dam Tamsis Ba'azhara, that generally, the Chachamim hold, the trickle blood is only a lav. Rav Yehuda Imer Bekaris. Rav Yehuda says, no, that blood has a full-fledged din of Dam, and if you eat that blood, you get karis. So says the Gemara, Rav Yehuda is of the opinion that even the trickle blood, you get karis, and therefore, according to Rav Yehuda, you could scoop up the blood, and you could go do the zrika. And why is it not nullified? It's not nullified because Rav Yehuda says both dams are okay. Ask the Gemara, what do you mean? That was with regard to drinking, the issur of drinking blood. But with regard to getting the kapara and a carbon, Rav Yehuda agrees that you can't get a kapara, you cannot get atonement with the trickle blood. You need to have the real blood. Shemar, the pasuk says, Ki adam hu nefesh yichaber, with the dam that is the nefesh, the life source. That's what gives you the lung. Says the Gemara, dam nefesh yaitza blood. Only the blood that the soul goes out with it, with the dam nefesh, the life blood. Mechaber dam sheina nefesh yaitza boy eina mechaber. So we're up a creek, we're stuck. We have all this blood on the floor. The Mishnah said, scoop up a cup. Why are you scooping up a cup in case potentially someone dropped the cup and dropped it after they already caught it, and then you're going to go scoop it up and save them by doing this rika? Says the Gemara, what do you mean, bittul? All the blood on the floor is going to nullify that little bit of lifeblood. Answers the Gemara, 2 lines down, Samchem and base. Elo Rav Yehuda l'taimei. Rav Yehuda goes according to his reasoning. Damar ein dam mivatel dam. Blood cannot nullify blood. Therefore, according to Rav Yehuda, since it's a mixture of dam and dam, blood with blood, it will not be mavatel, and therefore that's why you're going to save it by scooping it up from the floor. Says the Gemara, Tanya. We learned in a Braisa, 3 lines down, Samchem and base. Tanya, we learned in a Braisa. Armelan Rav Yehuda Chachamim. Yehuda said the Chachamim, Le'divreichem, according to your words, according to you the Chachamim, that you don't hold that they scoop up this blood from the floor. Lama Paikin is Azara. Why do they stop up the Azara? We spoke about the fact that there was a stream that went through the Azara. So what would they do? They would close it up. Why would they close it up? To make sure it was really a canal, I should say, and they would close it up so the water doesn't come in. And then what would happen? All the blood from all the carbonates would sit on the floor and collect there. Then what would they do? They would open up and wash it off. It says Rav Yehuda the Chachamim, if you don't hold it, they would scoop up the blood. Why are they plugging up the hole? Just to make a bloody mess? Literally. Amrullah, the Chachamim said, no, it was to give a wonderful praise to the Kohanim, that they would walk till their knees with blood. That's how many carbonates. The blood was all the way up to their knees. So they purposely stopped it up in order to show how wonderful the Kohanim were. Says the Gemara, what do you mean? But it's going to be a chatzitza. We know that Kohanim are not allowed to have a chatzitza between themselves and the floor of the Beis HaMikdash. If they're standing on blood, there's a chatzitza. Says the Gemara, no, lachu. It's a liquid. It's liquids aren't a chatzitza. Kiritana, they go into the Reisa. Hadam v'adyoy v'achalov. Blood, ink, and milk, vadvash, and honey, yeveshim, when they're dry chaytz and they're chaytzitza, they're into position between the kohen and the floor. Lachem, but when they're moist, ein chaytzin. Okay, very good. But says Gemara, what do you mean? But the kohenim's clothing is going to get filthy. And utanan, we learned if the kohenim's clothing were dirty, these were the kohenim, these were the warriors of the king. You're working in the king's palace in the Beis HaMikdash. If your clothing gets dirty and you do the avodah, avoida psula. The avoida is basel. So how are you purposely making blood? Now you're going to make the Kohanim's clothing all dirty, and it's going to passel up the whole avoida. V'chi Tema says, maybe you'll tell me. They'll pull up their clothing, they'll pull up their tunic above their knees, so it doesn't get dirty. Midai bad, that the clothing is a fitted tunic. Midai kim it's perfectly fitted, and therefore, what does it mean? It's perfectly fitted, meaning, and it has to be perfectly fitted that you have to keep your clothing down. You can't pull it up. Furthermore, the Mefarshim say it's not just that you can't pull it up; they needed their hands for that avodah. So if they pulled it up, they would have to tie a belt or something to keep it up, and that you can't do. Says the Gemara, what are we talking about? When was the blood up to their knees? Says the Gemara, when they were walking with the limbs up the ramp. That's not an avodah. So at that point, while they're walking up the ramp with all the limbs of the Karban Pesach, that's when the blood went all the way to the knees, and we're not concerned that the clothing is going to get dirty. Why? Because it's not an avodah. Says the Gemara, is that true? It's not an avodah. Kahuna, the fact that the Kohanim had to be the ones to bring it up, Avoidahi, we see it is an Avoidah. The time we went to the price. The Kohen serves all on the Mizbeach. The kavis, this means carrying the limbs up the ramp, and that is part of Avoidah. So that means it has to be with the Kohen, that means it's an Avoidah. Ella says, you're right, but Lechaz ate him the Maracha. It's referring to when they brought the wood to the Maracha, to the pyre on top of the Mizbeach. That was not an Avoidah, the Lav Avoidi, and therefore we don't mind that the blood goes up to their knees. By lechas evarim the kaves, by lechas dam. However, when they brought up the limbs, they brought up the blood. Mia hechi azli demaski itztabi. Says Gemara hechi azli. What do you mean? But there were other points of this avodah. There's blood everywhere. How do they do that? They're getting their clothing dirty. Says Gemara demaski itztabi. They walked atop of platforms. They had some raised platforms on the floor of the Mizbeach Hamikdash, so that the Kohanim did not get dirty. Says Gemara kitzan. So we concluded the case, concluding the story. Thailand, what would they do? They would hang up the Karban Pesach, mafshit, and they would do the hafshat, the skinning of it. Karu, they would rip it open. By tzio, say murun, they would take out the innards. Nasan b'magis, they put them in a bowl, aktirim, to burn it on the mizbeach. Atahu gufei have maktalu. Says Gemara, was he the one himself that had to do it? What do you mean? The Havshata was able to be done by Yisrael. The Haktara, the burning, had to be done by a Kohen. Says the Gemara, you're right. To have it burnt, meaning because the person doing the Havshata is not necessarily the one doing the Haktara, so it means to have it burnt at the top of the Mizbeach. Says the Gemara, Tana, we learned in the Mishnah. They would take the Karban Pesach and put it in its hide, and they would throw it over their shoulder. They would throw it over their shoulder, and then what? Amarav Ilish Tayois, like an Arab merchant. What's going on over here? As Mefarshim explained, in order to show chashivas to it, they would even degrade themselves. They would carry it in a degrading manner in order to show chashivas for the act they are doing, show that Karban Pesach is so important. They're even willing to act like an Arab merchant. We finished the first perek of the second part of Pesachim, and Amir Hashem, we should conclude many more brakim, even more karbanas. I'm hoping by now things are slowly coming clear. We should do a chazara, and we should continue learning together. Let's just do a haskala on the next Mishnah, even though it goes all the way into Amud Aleph. But let's just begin. It says the Mishnah, Elu Dvarim, these are the items of Pesach. On the Pesach, Teichen is a Shabbos that push off the Shabbos. And this year, Mirza Shem, it should be Nageya, Erev Pesach Shachal B'Shabbos. So which part of the Karban are pushing off Shabbos? Shchitasai, the slaughters, Rikasai, the sprinkling damai of the blood, Umichai Kravav, and the rinsing of the innards, that they take off the intestines, they wash, they have to clean off all the waste products, V'aktaras Chalavav, and the burning of the fats. Avol tzliyasa, as we've seen already, but the roasting of the Karban Pesach, adachas kravav, and the rinsing of the innards, einan deichen es Shabbos. Those parts are not deichen Shabbos. Harkavasai, carrying the animal to the Beis Hamikdash, v'aveisav v'chutz l'tzcham, and bringing from out to the tzcham. V'chatichas yivilasai, cutting off a warts of the Karban Pesach, ein deichen Shabbos. That is not deichen Shabbos. Rav Eliezer Omer, Rav Eliezer says these last three are yes deichen Shabbos deichen. We'll stop here in the middle of the Mishnah, as tomorrow we're going to have a lengthy discussion with Rav Eliezer the figuring off which items are yes deicha, which items are not. We'll pick up from here tomorrow.